Now, for more on this, Dr. Alexandre Koberle, a research associate at Imperial College London, joins us now. Thanks for joining us on the show once again. Now, put this into context for us. How much of a setback is this?
Well, it is, I would say, a minor setback. It will really depend on what happens next week, because what happened this past week was the technical part of the conference. Now, tomorrow, all the political leaders arrive in Katowice, and that is when the actual negotiations will begin, and they can choose to pick this back up. Now, the difference between note and welcome is also very up for interpretation. Note means that you're aware of it. Welcome means that you're happy it exists. So it's not like the text is denying what the report said. It is just a little bit of a weaker language there. But much will depend really on what the negotiations bring out tomorrow. And in a way, this is actually good because it has put this into the headline. So we are talking about this report. So a lot of people will probably be curious about what is it in this report that these four countries do not want to endorse.
Okay, so minor, that's your view just now. Now, just for some context, given that there are many skeptics, including the US president, can you just explain to us the scientific evidence for climate change?
Well, the scientific evidence really goes back to the 19th century. The greenhouse effect was established back in the 19th century. Since the 1970s, there's been lots of science. The science is really settled on this. Climate change is happening, and humans are causing it. We are driving this change to the global climate system. The more important question is really what to do about it. And this is where the political part comes in. So you have different types of skeptics. You have people who just are misinformed by a lot of the complexity of the issue. But there are those, particularly political leaders, that do understand the consequences of taking action to curb climate change. And the political implications of that usually imply economic losses to some groups. And that is what they're trying to avoid. So it's really a difference. It's not really the climate science that is in question here, but more what to do about it. And that is a political question.
And when you look at just what happened there in France over the past 4 weeks, how easy do you think it is to implement changes such as this?
Well, a couple of things about that. Yes, it is important, and I think that it's a problem of communication, mostly, really. The protests in France may have started because of a fuel tax supposedly implemented to help curb climate change, but it spiraled into something else. So much so that even though the government has backed down on passing this tax, the protests are still going on. The process that has led to the inequalities in France and all the problems that are driving these protests go back much longer than Macron and this particular tax. So this is a different story. However, what it does bring out is the fact that there are people who stand to lose the jobs that they've depended on. Certain regions are going to be particularly impacted. So there has to be a clear conversation about just transition. So a transition to a low carbon economy that is fair and just, and that takes into account these communities that will be negatively impacted by a shift away from fossil fuels. And this is what I think is lacking in the communication, the way that Mr. Macron presented that, because it was a tax on fuel, but also a few months ago there was a cut in tax on wealth. So it impacts the poor, but he gives benefits to the rich. So we have to be very careful on how these questions are framed, and in particular to address the needs of those who are going to be most impacted and who are most vulnerable to it, who are working classes and people, and poor people in particular in developing countries especially.
Thank you so much for pointing out that remark about communication. Dr. Alexandre Koberle there from Imperial College London.